Don't take it so seriously. Lighten up. Trust the mystery. Lighten up. It doesn't matter anyway. Just enjoy your life. Get out of your way. Lighten up.
Welcome to Lighten Up with Bonnie Worth on Empower Radio, an inspirational hour of conversation and interviews to help you shift perspective and create balance between being spiritual and human. Now here's your host, Bonnie Worth on Empower Radio.
Lighten up.
Hello and happy Wednesday, sweet friends. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. And what a great day to be having a radio show. I was just sitting here in preparation and thinking, wow, here we go into a conversation today that has us really integrating our ego. Going to get more to that as we get into conversation. But we sit here right now as retrograde just begins. And of course, we're right smack dab within a new moon. And this is such an incredible moon right now that we're interplaying with. It's one that is asking us to take a review of our lives and to identify, where our patterns are and how is it that we can begin to make some new and healthier choices for our lives, begin to get out of that constant repetitive Groundhog Day loop that we can get stuck in so that we can actually begin to spiral up and forward in our lives into a new set of circumstances and a new way of living and being. So this is, right now we're sitting within this influx of energy that is asking us to take a look at, as I said, those patterns and what it is, what's the learning? What's the wisdom here? What is it that we're being asked to release from in terms of what would be old belief systems and old paradigms, and really getting into a readiness to move into a next chapter in our lives that reflects a greater level of understanding as well as acceptance of who we are. This is really a time where we are being placed in God bless this magnificent universe for placing us smack dab in a time and an energy where it is about us confronting our greatest fears, overcoming our wounds, the monkey mind of our very human self, and transcending into something new and better and more in alignment with what is our authentic truth. So it's not uncommon right now within this new moon, you may be feeling a little extra emotional, maybe even, and I don't like to even go there, but you know what? Sometimes we can feel like we've been victimized by life, especially under the energy of a new moon. So it can, we get into a place where we're looking at what has been and really frustrated and upset over what is, and into a place of saying, okay, I'm ready for more. And all of this, of course, is shaping our future. And this is where we are in this deep review because we are developing our wisdom. And I mean, I'm a huge believer. You've heard me say time and time again on the show, I don't believe we're here to learn lessons. I think that's really hard theory of school, the school of life. I believe that we are here to develop wisdom, to gather wisdom so that we can begin to move forward mindfully in a way that allows us to respond to life and to the opportunities that present themselves in understanding that everything within the universe is happening for us. So we're in this place, this heightened frequency and vibration of this new moon. As I said, as retrograde starts, we're in this place of saying, okay, I'm ready to open my heart. I'm ready for change, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but hey, why don't I address a part of me that maybe I have been a little hard on, and that becomes our ego. Now, for a lot of spiritual people, And I know this has been, the case in terms of some of the teachings and some of the speaking events and the different things that I've attended over the years in terms of this idea of transcending the ego or releasing the ego or getting over our ego. And yet that couldn't be further from the truth that, we have ego. Ego is a part of us. As I say, ego always seems to get such a bad rap. And it's not about letting go. It's not about transcending. It's not about fighting against it, because ego is not bad. So it's a necessity for life as we breathe. And I'm going to, speak more about that. The problem isn't that we have an ego, but it is the unhealthy parts of the ego that tend to take over and rule our lives. So we look at, developing our ego, nurturing within the ego, and bringing it into alignment with, something more within truth. Now, ego is that part of us that is the protector. That's really its job. Our ego has a job, and that is to absolutely protect and keep us secure. That's not such a terrible thing. It's protecting, and it's trying to keep us safe and secure. So we look at understanding that this part of us is, it is a part of us. It is this part of us that is actually here to help. And so we look at how do we work with our ego to allow it to be useful for us in moving forward in our lives. I mean, it is where we begin to understanding that whatever can be, we are what prevents us from achieving what we truly wish and desire in our lives. And so we begin to look within ourselves of how can I work with me, the light and the dark, the up and the down of everything that goes on within me in order to achieve and to become and to move forward in life in amazing ways, no matter what that is, whether it's just the day-to-day shenanigans of life or whether that is something that becomes of a greater purpose. Now, the ego, as I said, it's what keeps us safe and secure. It's like a warm, fuzzy blanket, for most people. Now, we all have a story. There is something that we have been through that has kind of knocked the wind out of our sails. We might have, during our life at some point been slammed by trauma. Or we didn't get what we needed in some way. There was some aspect of neglect, whether it was neglect neglect of others, or whether we've neglected ourselves in some way. And so in that, our ego gets hurt. And when we don't have an opportunity to address those wounds, our ego learns to compensate in a way that becomes our protector. It becomes our defense. It becomes our reactive. And even though it might be a little dysfunctional, it's also the part of us that is, as I said, keeping us safe and keeping us secure and ensuring that the bad stuff doesn't happen again. So we look at understanding that our ego, that lowest ego within us, is shielding. It is protecting us from the outside world. But on the flip side, it is what is preventing us from truly loving ourselves, falling in love with our life, falling in love with our fate, and really unlocking what we can understand to be the door to our own personal power so that we can be, within the world, to be, do, and have, and the great things that can come about. So we look at the low part of our ego as being that part of ego that is rooted in fear. Right? Something bad is going to happen. It's where our anxiety stems from. It's the limiting beliefs. It's our toxic thinking patterns. And we can have, it can be almost a little bit debilitating at some times. Now, before I get into any more about this, I really want to also help us understand that our ego, when we're in a healthy state of our ego, it is what is helping us to overcome those fears and insecurities and anxieties as we evolve, that we're able to kind of, move into a place of more peace and ease within our life. And that comes from a result of nurturing our ego. But we need to understand a little bit more about ego. And ego, we can say, has kind of what we can discern or decipher as being two dimensions or two sides to the coin. I mean, it falls into what we understand the law of polarity, right? Where there is, with everything within the universe is like two sides of the coin or two sides of the story. So when we understand that, first of all, our ego, that we have an inferior ego and we have what's referred to as superior ego. Now, most people in the spiritual world, and not all of them, but most people, the ones that are coming forward as the healers, the helpers, the ones of the compassion, the ones that feel called to make a positive difference in the lives of others, those that want to stop the hurt and the wounding, and just are here to be the light onto the world. Within this place, we come in, it's programmed within us that we have an inferior ego. The inferior ego that is within the programming, within the recesses of our subconscious mind. There's this inferiority that becomes the loop of the I am not good enough. That in some way with an inferior ego, as I said, that rooted in where our anxiety comes into play, those limiting beliefs, those toxic patterns have us, we're programmed already to come in feeling not good enough, thinking we're less than other people, and in some way, in constant need or validation, whether it be, to boost our self-esteem, because maybe, again, that neglect, we've been ignored. There's all those things that come into play. And we can sometimes, with an inferior ego, where we get into being overly sensitive to the opinions of others. The inferior ego state, is where we become easily swayed. It's what can allow where we get into being bullied or taken advantage of. And inferior ego, there is low faith in ourselves. We have low faith in ourselves. We're just not good enough. Now, on the flip side, there is what's referred to as a superior ego. Now, superior ego we see play out within the world of narcissism. So superior ego can be those that are disrespectful, that are unkind, that are uncaring and intolerant. The ones that, use anger to control other people. That, that refuse to see the other person's perspective, that become very dramatic, defensive, easily triggered. So we get into this, these where the inferior ego can feel very overwhelmed by emotions. We personalize everything that other people say and do. Where the superior ego has a sense of entitlement, of grandiosity. There's a sense of competition with other people. That the superior feels jealous and judgmental of even other people's success. They avoid apologizing, won't take responsibility, is always right. Whereas the inferior acts with integrity, but can repeat problematic behaviors that actually cause greater suffering. And can also be in a place where they use substances to avoid, to numb out, to escape, to detach, or distract from those really uncomfortable feelings. We can get into the place. Now, there are two sides to the coin, which means that within each of us, we can play at this in both ways. Some people have as I said, depending on where you are within the balance or within the scales of things, can have a more, inferior ego, that lack of self-confidence, where others are more within the superior aspect, within the aggressiveness of things. The superior lets other people be responsible for their problems. They don't own it. Whereas inferior says, oh my gosh, these problems must all be because of me. Are you understanding the difference? Inferior ego is where we don't feel worthy and we don't feel deserving of good things in our life. As I said, we're in this place of creating greater suffering. Whereas the inferior has a strong sense of personal power. Not very flexible. So in order for us to really move forward in our life, we need to, of course, the healthy ego, we have to create a healthy ego. And that healthy ego is based on the core beliefs that we have within ourselves. And the unhealthy ego is based on the core beliefs that have been based on fear, whether the unhealthy ego is in inferior or in superior. So we can't avoid our ego. We can't destroy it or even transcend it. We look at integrating it as a part of us. I want, it was interesting. As I was preparing for the show today, it brought me back to, years ago within my life and within the people, within the way things play out and sometimes. And I remember being with a friend of mine. We're both within the spiritual world. We're doing some work together. And one of the things that always became a part of the conversation was that in some way I was being shamed because I had an ego. And maybe that's why now I'm so passionate about helping to understand the ego, working with the ego, integrating the ego, because I was shamed for having an ego, as if there was something bad or wrong about me. You think perhaps maybe I was one of those that was playing with the inferior aspect. But there was a shaming to the fact that I had an ego. Bonnie, you shouldn't you shouldn't feel that way. That's just ego. But our feelings are so valid. And that was always what would be my argument, or would always be what I would fall into in terms of my recourse within the conversation. It was a matter of understanding that my feelings are valid. So these feelings that I'm feeling, the ones that, whether it is fear, whether it is anxiety, whether it is insecurity or doubt or a desire for more in my life, how does that make me, a bad person? I wasn't understanding, because my feelings are valid. There's no right or wrong about them. Your feelings are valid. My feelings are valid. And just because we have feelings, we needn't be shamed about it because that refers to an ego. If we didn't have an ego, I'll tell you what, if I didn't have an ego and there was people in the world, everybody had no ego, we would all be stir crazy. We wouldn't get anything done. Nothing would get achieved and accomplished in this life whatsoever. It would be complete gong show and chaos if we didn't have our ego. So this isn't about shaming ourselves because we have an ego, or shaming ourselves because we react or have a feeling that gets stimulated inside of us. It's about understanding the ego. It's about accepting within it and strengthening our identity with who we are. Our greatest soul self-desire is to fulfill our karmic purpose. And our ego has a desire to strengthen the identity of who we are. And both of them are essential for our life. However, when we get into conflict, that's where, that anxiety, depression begins to set in. There's a conflict between the soul and the little human. But we need to understand that this isn't about ridding ourselves of the ego. This is about giving presence to our ego, to integrate our ego. An integrated ego allows us to be in a place where we are heart-centered, our mind is open, we're considerate, we're forgiving. It's natural to be nice. And I giggle at that because, oh my gosh, we can think in terms of the inferior ego, that narcissistic aspect of things, and to know that there is such a thing as spiritual narcissism for the people that get into a place that are in all of the development, all of the growth, all of the healing. There's almost like an aspect of them that becomes exaggerated within themselves, and they lose their capacity to be nice, to be polite. They begin to feel entitled. And those are the ones who begin to criticize where other people are on their spiritual journey. Have you ever ran into those people? I know I certainly have. Oh my gosh, I just can't believe that's what she's doing. Like if that's, she's so, I can't believe she's not in our club, because that club over there that she's hanging out with, oh my gosh, all they're doing is meditating. There really is this superiority that takes place within spirituality as well. And so we really get into a place of, this is about developing a healthy sense of self, a healthy connection, and aligned with truth within ourselves. So that we can, both our desires and the things that we're looking to fulfill within our own journey, our karmic purpose, the reason why we incarnated here, what we're meant to be doing with this beautiful life of self, is aligned, not exaggerated in one direction or the other. But we get into this place of ego, and especially under this surge of new moon vibes that are playing up, where everything that has been wounded within our ego is asking to be nurtured and to be healed, where we look to love that part of us. We're not here to let go of our ego. We're not here to pretend we don't have an ego. I'd like to offer an alternative today. And how about we look at building up our ego? Nurturing it in a healthy way so that it begins to serve within ourself, to evolve, so that we can finally release our fears, our insecurities, our anxieties, and all those feelings that we have of feeling inferior from believing what other people have to say and not realizing our own self-worth. Doesn't that sound good? Oh my gosh. Believing what other people say goes very deep for someone who has an inferior ego. What they can say sometimes, even though it's completely untrue, can still make us feel bad. It begins to knock our self-confidence, our self-worth. We feel hurt. And it actually can have us step off of path. It can actually have us throwing in the towel, giving up, being upset. And again, all of those insecurities, all those doubts begin to come up. That internal mind chatter begins to go off. So instead, we look at nurturing within the ego so that we can be at a place of confidence inside of ourselves. So that those negative comments can bounce right off, where we get into a place of saying, I don't care. You can think I'm an idiot. That's good. I'm good with that, because we know our truth. We are aligned. Feeling inferior comes from believing what other people say. It's our self-worth, it's our self-esteem, and all of which really was in development as a child. Our worthiness is very similar to what we believe we deserve. As kids, we remember stuff, right? We remember things and we hold it into our adulthood, even if we cannot remember the details of it. The feelings that we experienced, the beliefs that we took on of in some way feeling not good enough, or the worthlessness that we can feel, comes from believing what other people have told us about us. So we get into this place of, okay, let's grow in confidence. Let's align with truth. Let's work with our ego in a way that allows it to be in support, in love, in harmony with our soul self. And that requires a little bit of knowledge, some inner work, a level of maturity within the spiritual journey, but in a way to completely be in harmony with who we are. In harmony with who we are. And that can only happen by having a healthier inner life. That's essential to bring that ego, low ego mind into relationship with our soul self. That soul self, which is our authentic self. The most authentic state of who we are, the truth of who we are. And I'm going to hopefully, by the time this show wraps up, I'm going to be able to find some ways to bring the ego and soul self into that harmonious relationship. All right, we're going to talk more about this after the commercial break. We just began. So much to share. I'll be back shortly.
Don't take it so seriously. Lighten up. Trust the mystery. Lighten up. It doesn't matter anyway. Just enjoy your life. Get out of your way. Lighten up.
Now back to Lighten Up with Bonnie Worth on Empower Radio.
Welcome back to the show, sweet friends. So today we're building our self-esteem and building upon our ego to take us from the place of inferior, where we feel not good enough, and the work, so to speak, becomes the internal dialogue that we begin to play with within the mind. We can build ourselves up or we can knock ourselves down. Remember, we're already programmed. At the lowest level of our ego, we are programmed to be inferior, to be in the loop of not good enough, that in some way we need to compensate or make up for some kind of deficiency. We're this less than aspect of who we are. And so no matter what we're looking to achieve and accomplish in our life, this internal dialogue, these belief systems that we hold about ourselves ring true for us no matter what, we know on a conscious level to be truths. That's what is subconsciously within us is what holds the confines of what becomes possible. So the first step we look at is we need to start shifting through some of the unhealthy beliefs that we have about ourselves. And no matter what other people can say from the outside of us, that on outside of us, people say, oh my gosh, you're such a kind person. Inside, you may not believe that you are. You may continue to criticize yourself for all of the ways that you have hurt other people or that you were unkind. And so within it begins this really unhealthy belief system that you don't deserve kindness because in some way you have to make up for something bad that you've done somewhere along the way. It doesn't make sense on a logical part of things, but when we get into the shifting and healing through within some of the belief systems we hold, it begins to make sense at a whole other level of things. But these programs inside of us, these belief systems that we hold about ourselves, we need to begin to start to questioning whether the beliefs we have about ourselves are really true. And that becomes the work for someone with an inferior ego. It becomes the work in order to achieve and accomplish anything we want to achieve and accomplish in our life. If we're setting out to do great things with our life, if we have goals and dreams and aspirations, we're never going to be able to bring them into the reality when we have this inner dialogue that begins tripping us up and creating limitation from within ourselves. So we begin to first identify we have identified with everything we've believed about ourselves, and the universe will make us right about everything we believe about ourselves. It's just how it works. And so if we are setting out on a goal to build a successful business, but we don't feel worthy of being successful, we're going to be stuck in that ever constant loop, the inferior ego of feeling not good enough. Whether it is successful enough, rich, smart enough, brilliant enough, whatever it is, good enough. That paradigm itself becomes something when we have an inferior ego where we have to take action. And what I refer to as being that aspect of responsibility within the makings of our mind as to what plays out, what that internal chatter is really in conversation about. We can take a list of affirmations. We can Google our little heart away in terms of some positive affirmations to begin to work with, and those are great. But our affirmations need to come from within us in order for them to be successful in helping us to shift through the unhealthy belief systems. So in a belief system that says, I am not good enough, we need to remind ourselves often that, whoa, hey, hang on. I can do this. I am good enough. I may not know how to do it, but I'm open to learning. We begin to encourage and talk to ourselves. How about in talking to ourselves, this becomes one of the concepts I want to share. Can we just take a moment and thank our ego? You can do this with me right now here on the show. Take the opportunity to fall into your heart and just say, wow, thank you, ego. Thank you so much for all of the ways that you have kept me warm, safe, and secure in the fuzzy blanket that you've provided. In all of the ways you've protected me, you've held me, you've shielded me and ensured that I was safe. I'm so grateful to know that I could rely on you in that way. I've never been able to rely on anyone else to shield, support, and keep me protected and safe. So thank you for doing that for me. Thank you. And so I want now to move forward in knowing that you've got my back. I appreciate that you've got my back, ego. But I really am going to do this because I feel like this is a part of my calling. I feel like this could be possible. This kind of excites me. I love the idea of moving forward into this goal. I feel like I'm really going to grow here. I'm going to evolve here. That life is going to get better for me as a result. So you see, we begin to talk with our ego. So if you can understand that our ego is like a small child that exists inside of us. So to use another analogy, we can think of the person who is the child and we can think of the adult. Children are just learning how to become the adult. Our ego is no different. That inside of us it's this child that exists inside of us. That low inferior ego is like a child that needs to be nurtured, talked to, reassured, and helped into maturity. It needs to be just like your children or the children in our world need to be loved and nurtured into adulthood. That this part of us needs to be loved and nurtured from within to come into its maturity, to come into alignment, to come into the high state of ego, this healthy place of ego. So just as we would talk to a child, I can think of my little grandson and how I talk to him and, whoa, gentle baby, easy, it's okay, you're going to be okay. You've got lots happening. There's lots to see and lots to do in the world. And it's okay. You might not have all the answers. But I'm going to help you. You're going to learn. You'll learn. Think of a baby learning to walk. They need a little bit of assistance. They need to get the coordination. They need to get the development. They need to get their sense of balance. It's no different for our ego. Our ego is this child that needs to get its sense of balance. It needs the reassurance. It needs the nurturing. It needs the attention. not to be pushed away, neglected, dissolved, transcended. It freaks out. What do you mean you're going to leave me behind? I am a part of you. So we look at nurturing the ego and talking to it as if it's a small child inside of us. So every time we have those doubts, fears, insecurities, all of those, that story that we have of the not good enough inside of us, it becomes the work. It becomes our responsibility to ourself to nurture, to encourage, to reassure, to snuggle, to care for. And so when we can begin in conversation to acknowledge, I know you feel scared inside. I know. We've been here. We've been down this road before. I remember what it's like to be scared. But you know what? We're much wiser this time. We've got everything inside of us because of all those other experiences we have. We're pretty good at knowing what to do and what not to do already. So let's do this. Let's take a chance. With the wisdom we have, with the know-how, and what it is how we're going to grow and evolve in the way, that's exciting. Let's explore this. Let's see what else is possible. Our ego is and can be our friend. We actually require our ego. As I said, we would go insane. The whole world would be in chaos if nobody had an ego. Nothing would get done. Nothing would get accomplished. In fact, it is me sitting here on this radio show today because I have an ego. I wouldn't be able to do this work if I didn't have an ego. That part of me, that is me, that receives from the universe as it works through me and comes into the world. So we begin to really look at helping our ego to know it's safe and to know it's okay. Now, with an inferior ego, we have to inflate it just a little bit, my friends. Oh my gosh, we have to inflate the ego. Oh, I don't want to have an inflated ego because then I'm going to get into being superior. I don't want to turn into a narcissist. Let me tell you, if you're worried about becoming a narcissist, you're not a narcissist. A narcissist never worries about being a narcissist. They just are. But you in the inferior, if you're thinking it, let me solve that puzzle for you right now. If you're worried about becoming a narcissist with an inflated ego, it won't be possible. Not when you're coming in from the inferior. And within the inferior, we have to look at inflating our ego. And we can inflate our ego in healthy ways to build ourselves up so that we have more self-esteem, more self-confidence. We inflate our ego by changing that internal chatter, by giving ourselves compliments. I mean, just pay attention to the compliments that you give other people. Let that be where your affirmations come from, because the good that you see in others is the good that is of you reflecting back to you. It's just the good that has not been realized within you. We compliment other people all the time, but that is you waiting to be discovered. That reflection is you waiting to be discovered. So let your affirmations be the compliments that you give to other people all the time. Oh my gosh, I just love your sense of humor. I have a great sense of humor. You are so gentle and kind to other people. You inspire me. I am so gentle and kind. I am an inspiration. Use the aspect of compliments to begin to create your own affirmations. Don't Google them. For every compliment you give to someone else is yours. It's yours. It's you reflecting back to you. So take those compliments, stand in front of a mirror, and start to inflate your ego by, instead of talking trash about yourself, that you begin to speak the good that you see reflecting. Not so easy to do. If you really want to take this into a whole different level, try doing that standing naked in front of the mirror. It takes it into a whole new aspect of self-acceptance. But just start there. Start by receiving compliments. Start by inflating your ego in a healthy way to boost yourself. I found recently that I was really sliding down the self-confidence kind of loop. The inferior ego of me, again, as we start moving forward in path and purpose and bigger things and goals and dreams and aspirations, that internal dialogue begins to come up. There's some beliefs, no matter what no matter how long we've been doing this work, let me just tell you, sweet friends, I've been doing it for a while. There will always be a new belief that surfaces, something that is within limitation, something that is untrue. Something that the inferior ego is still trying to convince me of. And so I nurture it. I talk with it. I have a conversation. I acknowledge it for being there, and I give presence with gratitude. Give presence with gratitude. And then I begin to compliment myself. I begin to build my ego up so that I can lift myself up in a way that is healthy. And one of the greatest ways, and as I said, I really felt my confidence sliding, can we get back to some I am statements? Boost your confidence. Sit down every day and answer and describe yourself 5 times over with I am. Describe who you are. Describe who you are as a person. Describe who you are as the healer, the helper, the caregiver, the medium, the channel. Describe who you are as a friend. Describe who you are as a wife and mother. Describe who you are as a business person. Describe who you are as a daughter. I don't care, or a son. I don't care what 5 things you choose, but choose 5 things to describe yourself and use I am statements. Every single day before you start your day, sit down with a pen and a paper and write it out for yourself. Begin to build and inflate that ego so that you can move forward with your day in confidence, in alignment with truth. The I am. I felt my confidence sliding, and even though I have a tattoo that says I am, so that I put it there on my body, so I always remember that whatever follows the I am either honoring my creation and honoring myself, or I am completely, destroying myself. So I got back into the practice of the I am. 5 things every day. I am talkative. Surprise. I am confident. I am affectionate. I am accepting. I am kind. I am tolerant. I am funny. I'm successful. I'm healthy. The I am. Come back to that. Begin to inflate your ego. Talk yourself up. We've spent so much time in inferior based on the crap that's happened in our lives, that it is up to us to heal the wound. It is up to us to change the conversation, the story, the dialect. No one else can do it for us. So to understand that ego is here to actually help us for more motivation in our life, to energize us into doing things that maybe we wouldn't otherwise pursue. Now, we could just let go of everything and go to the top of the mountain and just meditate until someone feeds us. Doesn't that sound nice? But we have to have an ego, as I say, in order for us to even, to do anything in life. Ego is the driving force that has helped me to thrive, that has helped me to evolve into more of what I am and who I am. My ego drives me to succeed and exceed in my life. When we work with our ego, we inflate it. We begin to exceed ourselves and we evolve. We feel better when we're evolving, helping someone else, changing our lives, changing the lives of others, being a part of something phenomenal. What a great feeling. It feels amazing. The expression of an accomplishment. To see someone else's face, when you've had a positive impact on their lives, oh my gosh, such a good feeling. So we begin to understand that in order for us to move forward, accomplish, achieve, to grow, to evolve, to have the boost of energy, to get out of feeling like the idiot into feeling like someone who has some smarts about them, it starts from within. Those messages that were the messages from within, not the outside influences, the messages from within. And when your messages from within become stronger in truth, people can talk smack about you and their opinion is not going to matter. But it takes some time. The trauma, the wounds, the beliefs, it doesn't just happen overnight. And when we feel this pull, when we get into a place of being within our own self, aligned, that's where that saying, what other people think of us is none of our business. Because it truly isn't. When we're an inferior, oh my gosh, we're so concerned about what other people are thinking about us. Do they like us? Are we accepted? Do they think I'm doing a good job? How many friends do I have on Facebook? How many followers do I have on Instagram? That's all ego, the inferior ego that is looking for validation. But when we come into alignment, we stop caring about the opinion of others. And we care more deeply into ourself, and we care more deeply into making a positive contribution in the lives of others. We begin to care for our life. Let ego fuel your passion, your drive, your motivation. Nurture it. Speak to it. Love it. Worry is not a bad thing. Worry only becomes the poison when we get stuck there. But worry from the ego, when ego starts to worry, how about we pay attention? It's inviting us to check into something. Something needs to be changed. We need to take some action. We maybe need to do something a little different. Something we've never done before needs to be doing. If we want to change the results we're having in life, we've got to change what we're doing. So when worry shows up, this beautiful part of our ego, we let it become the motivation for that change. To pay our bills, to choose healthy relationships, to create more programs, to make the soup. So my sweet friends, ego is not a bad thing. It's a tool that can be utilized in a healthy way. If we misuse it, it's going to cause us some problems. So let's evolve the ego so that some of the fears and insecurities in our life can disappear, that we can move from feeling inferior within our pursuits and within our lives to a place that allows us to matter. Every want we have originates from the ego's desire to be included in our life. Whenever you have thoughts or behaviors where you want, need, desire to be, do, and have, that's ego. Talk to your ego today. Ask it to evolve. Utilize it to get some things done. Let it become a part of you that is more passionate, more driven. Inflated in a healthy way, so that your capacity to be compassionate, to be caring, to live in balance, to feel whole increases. Compassion is the opposite of ego. Compassion is the caring about others. And when we care about others and we care about ourselves and are in balance, when the scales are completely balanced, beautiful things begin to happen for our lives. All right, my sweet friends. So, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, the same goes in terms of the ego. Do unto yourself as you desire others to do unto you. Speak kind, be kind, and love yourself through. I hope that all makes sense. I want to wish you a blessed and beautiful day, sweet friends. From my heart to yours, big, big love. Bye for now.